came to Geelong West in 1968. I was recruited from Drysdale Football Club. Came here as about 18, 19-year-old, and I came on 6 match permits because at that time I couldn't get a clearance. Drysdale wouldn't clear me here, and I was a bit sort of crook on them because they wouldn't clear me. Anyway, they later cleared me after the permits, and they advised me that the reason they didn't clear me was because they thought I mightn't have got a game if I didn't go on match permits. So I was lucky enough to play under Brian Brushfield in the first year here, and in 1968 we won the Premiership in second division. So it was a huge thrill to be part of that. And then we won the 1972 championship under Bill Goggin, second division. 1974 I went to Geelong, was recruited to Geelong with Ricky and Mark Brown. So I went down there and spent a couple of seasons there, and then 1976 mid-year came back to Geelong West, and then in 1979 Bill took over here and we played in the grand final. That was my last game as captain, and unfortunately we lost the grand final. So that was sort of the history of my playing history, and I retired after that, the grand final in 79. Probably the main attributes were my marking and ruck work. I was a pretty good high jumper at school, so I sort of had the ability to jump. Probably wasn't the best kick around, but over time developed a better kicking style and able to sort of get the ball and hit a target. And I suppose in VFA in those days, the centre clearance work was paramount because of the openness of the game, the 16 men aside, and just the forwards, the high-scoring forwards. So it was important to get the ball away from the middle. So that the midfield teams, because there was so much space, it was really important to clear the ball. So I developed a lot of handball, and just a running game. And I was reasonably quick. We used to have a lot of sprints here, and I seemed to do all right in the sprints. So that's. I guess people saw me as I worked pretty hard. I worked a lot harder on my footy once Bill came here. Yeah, look, the 68 grand final, we were the underdogs, there's no doubt. We were playing Williamstown at Paran, and I think everyone expected that Willie would win the game. We had a pretty tough side. We had blokes like John Oliver, Bob Moore, John Snell, Doug Stacey. They were tough guys. And I think they reported in the Geelong Advertiser the next week that there was 43 fights before three-quarter time, so it was pretty tough. And Brushy spoke at three-quarter time and really he just said to the guys, I want you to run through a brick wall for me, you've got it, you can do it. And I think everybody just lifted. I was lucky enough to take a couple of marks in the forward line in the last quarter and kick a couple of goals, which is probably wasn't true to form for me, but and we got over the line. So it was a fantastic experience to think that, in my first year I could be successful in the Premiership. And then 72, to win a championship, it was unbelievable to just think you'd have that much success in a short time. I was fortunate enough to play in a premiership at Drysdale as a 17-year-old, so came here and then lucky enough to get a couple more. And you sort of take it for granted a bit. You see other guys that have never had that opportunity. That was for me. I won I think the best and fairest here in 1973, and then I was runner-up in 77. So that probably my better years and the highlights-wise. And the only regret I have, I think, is the 1979 grand final. We didn't win the premiership, and I probably in some ways feel like we sort of let Bill down and let the club down a fair bit by not winning on that day. And fortunately, I was a week after the grand final. My daughter was born, first child, and when I went in to see the birth, the specialist looked at me and said, "This will be better than the grand final, mate," and I think that's probably puts life into perspective. My first coach here was Brian Brushfield, and I said I was lucky to play under Brian. He'd come across from Geelong, and just a great fellow and great coach. He just the players used to just do whatever he wanted. The after-match, Brian would get up and they'd be making a lot of noise, and he'd speak and they'd all listen. He was really respected, and certainly I think he was the reason we won the premiership. And when Brian finished, the 69, Ron Tannable took over, and I had a great relationship with Ron. He was tough, and he was uncompromising. He knew that we're in first division. We had to win just a certain number of games, and he worked really hard to just try and win the games. But he taught me a hell of a lot about ruck work. Like he was, as a young person, I used to spend a lot of time talking to him, and he helped me greatly with ruck work. After him, Ian Bryant coached for a short time. Ian Bryant came from Footscray and came down and coached, and then he went back to Melbourne. And then 72, Bill came, and that sort of changed my footy once I got a relationship with Bill, because he changed my thinking on footy and training and everything else. So I had Bill until I went to Geelong in 74, and then in 1976 when I came back, Howard Smith was coaching. Howard had taken over as coach, and we had Howard Smith, and then Stuart Lord for a while. Stuart took over from Howard Smith, and then finally Bill came back, and that was the last year, 1979, with Bill. So look, I think the players that I played with, it probably, and I'd split them up into sort of position, I suppose, but the backman, John Oliver, Simon the Saint they call him, he was a wonderful full-back and as tough as they come. Howard Smith came from Northcote, came here and was the most reliable full-back and had a great reputation in VFA. In forwards, you couldn't go past Joe Radojevic, he was a superstar, Joe, and Graham McLean. I think Graham kicked 137 goals and came from St Kilda, and he's a freakish player, Graham. My relation mainly with the midfields, and I think you couldn't go past Rick Brown and Tony Gilmore. They're brilliant ball getters, and probably Ricky was the most stylish player you'd want to see. He was a great player. And then probably had Ruckman. The main ruck work I did was with Warwick Yates, and he's as tough as they come too, so, and a great fella. So they're just some of the better players, but geez, there's a lot, you'd have to go through. There's some really great players. I went to Geelong in 1974, with Rick and Mark Brown, and we went there on a 2-year deal. And like my first season, 74, I won the reserves best and fairest. I think I played 7 or 8 games in the first year. It took me a while to break and get my first game. And then the second year, we had, the seniors didn't have a lot of success. I think I played about another 7. I played 13 all up, so I played some more in 1975, and we were fortunate enough to win the reserves grand final in 75 and played with some great players then, with, Ian Hampshire, Kenny Newlands, Jeff Cassidy, just a really strong Rod Blake, players that you wouldn't expect to be playing in the reserves in those days, but the senior side was struggling, and I'm not sure, they just didn't seem to relate that well to Polly when he was coaching. And so 76 came along, and I was having some issues with the back injury and that, having some treatment, and I got left off the list, and consequently had a fallout with the club over contract and everything else, and left on pretty bad terms in the end. But fortunately I was able to make all that good and put it all behind you, and I've got a great relationship now. I still go to the club, go to the games, and we've moved on. VFA was tough and uncompromising. It really was. In this day and age, I guess people wouldn't understand just what it was like. The sort of things that went on during a game. And I felt, the toughest grounds to go to were Sandy, Port Melbourne and Dandenong. They were the 3 worst grounds. You didn't want to. You just wanted to get out with your head and your shoulders and come home with the 4 points if possible. But I remember when Bill took over as coach and we played down at Frankston, and Bill couldn't believe how tough it was down there. He'd come from the VFL, and obviously VFL was tough, but they were brutal, and Bill finished up getting his cheekbones smashed at Sunshine, I think. So it was tough. The players I played against, Eddie Malai at Dandenong, Vic Anderson at Port Melbourne, Harold Martin at Preston, and Big Bob Hurd at Preston. So they were all good players and played it hard. But we always have a beer after, and we sort of got on with it, and it was just accepted. Probably in my situation, I named the other grounds, but Preston was. I finished up in a practice match at Preston. I got my jaw broken in 2 places, and then later on, a couple of years later, I got whacked in the eye and finished up in the eye and ear for a week lost the side of my eye. So Preston wasn't a great spot for me. It was tough. So anyway, I'm still alive to tell the story, so that's good. Probably the biggest thing that I gained from the club was the friendships that I made. Certainly, coming from a country town and a country football team to play in the VFA, which at the time was pretty well regarded and was televised, and made enormous friendships that we've lifetime friendships here. And then I think probably meeting Bill, when Bill Goggin came here, he certainly changed my attitude to football, to training, and almost to life. You sort of gain life skills from the way Bill went about things. He was so passionate about it. And I guess the other thing was that I was fortunate enough to meet Albert Batty in my first year. Albert was the patron of the club, and then he became president. And as a result of that meeting, I started working for him in 1968 and continued to work for him and then his son for virtually my whole working life, and still involved with the family now. So that probably changed my life in a lot of ways, the relationship that I've gained just through the footy club.
You've given your heart to get here and your soul to get it right. You can take 'em boots and all, but it's sure gonna take a fight. When you spend all week getting to your peak, you're gonna have your say. You bet. On Sunday, it's gonna be a fight. It's Sunday.